Welcome to PEX Network and this Business Process Excellence Power 5 Virtual Roundtable session. I'm Cheryl Archer, Regional Director of the Western USA for Encito Consulting, and I'll be your moderator. Our roundtable discussion today is centered on why process excellence and business transformation initiatives have become such critical priorities for our companies today. We'll also look at operational excellence in line with driving strategy and how to implement change in leadership thinking and behaviors. In the lead up to this year's Business Performance Excellence Summit, we've gathered some of our keynote speakers to discuss the current themes and topics of discussion and to give them an opportunity to ask questions of their fellow practitioners in this interactive discussion. Before we get underway, I'd like to have each of our speakers briefly introduce themselves. Angie, if you could get us off.
Sure. Angie Canard. I work with Marsh and McLennan Agencies, a large insurance broker and risk management firm. My role is currently Senior Vice President of Operations, and I've been working with large-scale transformations for almost 20 years.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you. Sean Evans, please, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sean Evans. I am the Senior Vice President for Performance Excellence for University of Colorado Health. We're a large health system in Colorado. And like Angie, been working in organizational transformation and change for over 20 years. And healthcare is a great industry to be practicing what we preach, for sure.
Excellent. Welcome and thank you. Steve Jenkins, if you could finish us off, please.
Sure. Hi. My name is Steve Jenkins. I lead a team of internal consulting professionals supporting Anthem, which is the second largest health insurer in the country and the largest Medicaid payer. I joined that company in 2012, and we were part of a company called AmeriGroup, who was the largest Medicaid payer at that time. But I have an internal consulting group that supports Medicaid, Medicare, pharmacy, and product and benefits administration domains within Anthem.
Excellent. Thank you. So you can see we've got a great team here today and some very exciting topics to discuss. Our first topic is why has process excellence and transformation become such a critical priority for companies today? Steve, could you kick that off for us? Sure. Well, in my industry, which is health insurance, obviously the market dynamics are requiring us to do a lot more with less. We have domestic and global competition, particularly in the service industries, along with consumer demand for lower cost, higher quality experiences, really motivating organizations to streamline processes and become more consumer-centric. The continued growth of technology as the default for consumer interaction is also requiring processes that are adaptable and able to provide information in real time. Also, as the consumer continues to take on more of the burden of healthcare costs and insurance exchanges continue to proliferate, our model is becoming much more B2C, where it was previously largely B2B. And so this dynamic is obviously requiring health insurers like Anthem to transform their model to compete in the new consumer environment. Yeah, you mentioned information technology. Is that a big piece of it as well? Absolutely. I think health insurance and healthcare in general have been behind the times to some degree in the way that we utilize technology to outreach to consumers. We try to take our approach from the banking industry, who very highly transactional, largely impersonal for a number of years, and now has become very personal. And health insurance now is really, it's in the hands of the consumers to make decisions, whereas it used to be primarily their employers. So we try to utilize technology, or continue to utilize technology as a competitive advantage in our market. Very good. Thank you. Angie, how about for you?
I think there's definitely a combination of both external and internal factors. So marketplace competition, both domestic and international competition, clearly plays a key role here. And just the ability for the company to maintain financial performance and show shareholder value is clearly driving the need for large-scale transformations and improvement throughout the business. But not only that, our colleagues within the firm sometimes find it difficult to do their job. And it may be a combination of different technologies that are not integrated, as well as just processes that need simple improvement across the organization. So the combination of both internal and external factors has been driving that change for us.
And how long have you been on the road to transformation, to business excellence?
I would say that within my company, it has been around for at least 10 years. Just over the past 4 years, we've really started a large-scale initiative across the firm. But it's definitely, yeah, there's always a need for business improvement.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sean, how about for you?
So in the healthcare provider world, we're actually are providing the services for healthcare. It's interesting that we've always tried to be innovative and kind of push forward and do things better. But in the last 5 years, probably 5 to 7 years, we've had a radical transformation in, as Steve and Angie were talking about, in some of the technology where information and transparency is much more abundant. And what that is causing and what that is enabling is a very smart consumer, in our case, patients. So patient expectations are rising, where in healthcare, like Steve mentioned, we've never really had to worry about that before, but now patients are starting to do some shopping, both locally around the country and around the world, and they can get information now where they couldn't get it before. So it's really forcing healthcare to step up and to start doing things much better in order that we can make sure we continue to attract the right patients and do the right things for the patients from a safety and quality perspective. And we are a little bit behind the times, but the framework that a performance excellence or an operational excellence system provides is perfect for the healthcare delivery model, because we can still ensure safety, high quality, while at the same time making sure we continuously improve. So that's kind of where we're at with the performance excellence and the operational excellence piece.
Terrific. So I heard Angie and yourself mention kind of that 4 to 5 year time frame where you seem to have accelerated your transformation towards, business excellence. Is that the same for you, Steve? Last 4 to 5 years, you've seen kind of a dramatic change?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I actually, we stood up an internal consulting organization almost exactly five years ago. So we recognized at that time that there was a need for an area of the organization that was focused specifically on cross-functional, large strategic initiatives that really within a matrixed or heavily siloed organization didn't belong in any one specific area. So we came in and looked horizontally across the organization and brought to bear tools to help us transform our business processes to meet the larger needs of the organization, not specifically just any one area.
Great. So this is a perfect segue then into our next topic. Should operational excellence drive strategy or vice versa? Sean, can you start us off?
So I love this question. And when one of our health systems, as we were combining with Poudre Valley Health System, and while we were going through the Malcolm Baldrige process and got the award in 2008, we really struggled with this idea of is it a chicken and the egg concept, and does strategy drive operational excellence, or the other way around? What we found is that, and this is going to sound like maybe a cop-out answer, but they truly have to be a synchronous process with each other, and there has to be some intention to both, meaning we need to know from an operational side what the strategic calendar and what the strategic cadence looks like from year to year and how far we're looking out. But at the same time, our strategy folks need to understand what we're doing day to day to really enact their strategy. And we had a CEO at one point say that when you don't connect strategy to operations, all you have is a 2-day retreat, referring to the typical strategic retreat. So I think they definitely have to work together. And when systems are in place that allow for that, you get the synchronicity and you get momentum in both areas.
Very good. Thank you. Angie, for you?
I'm a firm believer that company strategy must be defined first. It typically spans over a 5-year horizon and clearly articulates that company's objectives, financial objectives, and then all functional strategies such as sales strategies, operations strategies, transformational efforts must align to that fundamental firm strategy. So if you take an example of a company that wants to compete with new products, then a transformational effort, for example, might be that they want to improve cycle time in their product development efforts. So all transformation must be aligned to the company's 5-year horizon strategy, in my opinion.
And have you been doing that recently? Is that what is driving your organization, is strategy first?
Yes, we have strategic imperatives, and all efforts must align to one of those strategic imperatives.
Great, thank you. Steve, how about you, chicken or the egg?
Again, I agree with Sean. I love this question. I think a lot of times it depends on the type of industry, the maturity of the organization specific to performance excellence. I can remember a time in the health insurance world, which is a world largely made up of consumers who just want us to get the transactional processes right. We weren't even able to do that. So, the core processes for health insurance, claims processing, and customer service and contracting with providers. If you're not doing those things well, I think it makes sense for that to drive your strategy, because until you're able to do those well, you really can't shift focus onto anything else, like innovation or better use of technology, as we mentioned before. So I think it depends on the industry, it depends on the organization, and where they are in that maturity model for performance excellence.
All right, so what I've heard then is Sean and Steve, you feel that operational excellence drives the strategy, and Angie, or at least balanced, should I say balanced, and then Angie, you believe that the strategy drives the process excellence. Do either of you have questions for Angie on their process?
Yeah, I'd like to, I'm coming at this from through a very biased lens of health insurance, fortunately or unfortunately. So I'm interested to hear from other organizations, when you think about operational excellence, what's that look like inside your walls, and how do you leverage your strategy to really influence or provide guidance for how you approach operational excellence?
So our strategy really revolves around client needs, product development, and growth areas for the business. And aligning operational excellence is simply a means to supporting those objectives. So if we take an example of growing sales, growing new business sales, then you may have a transformation effort within your fundamental sales processes. Or if there's capacity that's needed to support particular product or service areas within the business, then you align resources and transformations around ensuring that you can free up that capacity. So very general and high-level examples, but again, our strategy really kind of stems among pillars, and then from there we align all of our objectives.
Very good. Any other questions among the three of you for each other?
Angie, I think my question on the strategy as it relates to influencing operations is in healthcare. In my world, again, it's become such a kind of a murky future. So our scope on our strategy has really shrunk down to a point now where before we may have been 10 or 15 years out. Now we're only 3 years out. So we're really struggling isn't the right word, but we're really, relying on our operations folks to tell us what our patients and our customers are needing, and to help that drive strategy as well. So are you able still to expand the horizon of strategy and look further out than 36 months or so? And if so, how have you done that?
We are, and I would say that the one way to do it is to stay very close to your customers and your clients. Right? And if you have a strong process in place for listening to your clients and understanding what their future needs are, then you can look longer term into that horizon. So maybe if clients have new product needs, maybe they have data and analytics needs. Those are typically efforts that can't change overnight. And so therefore you have usually a 3 to 5 year horizon to plan for supporting those needs. So my recommendation is just to stay very close to your clients, whether it's through client forums, surveys, face-to-face phone interviews, and just really understand what your client strategies are and what their needs are, and then you can plan a little bit over a longer term horizon.
Excellent. Thank you all. That'll lead us down to our next topic for discussion then, which is ensuring alignment between the business strategy and the business transformation initiatives. How do each of you ensure that that happens? Steve, can you start, please?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's critical. It's important that the tail not wag the dog. So with finite resources like most organizations have, we have to make sure that our strategic business decisions are clear and that we leverage process improvement and transformation activities to really support those decisions. And so part of the role that my team has as an internal consulting group is to sit in between the strategic decision-making of our executive leadership team and the business. And so we work closely with business owners, with business partners, to make sure that any transformation initiatives they want to undertake, any process improvement activities that we might be involved in, clearly align to those strategic pillars. And for 2016, Anthem's made the decision that no project will get funding unless it has a very clear, tight alignment to one of our three strategic pillars. And part of the role of my team is to help business owners to translate that need into how it actually impacts those overarching pillars. And so absolutely, I think it's critical.
Great, thank you. Sean?
Yeah, in much the same fashion that we've got 7 strategic objectives that we follow as well, and on a yearly cadence, we'll come up with kind of the key initiatives that we need to push forward from a process improvement perspective, and we'll devote maybe 50 to 55% of our resources on that. And to Steve's point, there's got to be a very tight alignment, very tight goals, and a very tight timeline, and that's been very effective. Then we as things come up during the year, because we simply can't plan for anything, we kind of plan, and that's a loose term, for about 20 to 25% of our PI work to happen ad hoc through the year. But at the same rate, like Steve spoke about, nothing's going to get funded unless there's a very tight alignment to one of the strategic objectives. And then finally, and the thing that I probably like the most, is we actually have processes down at the work unit where people are actually doing the work, whether it's a nursing unit or whatever else, where they can actually give us ideas for an improvement. And it's not a suggestion box, it's much more robust than that, but ultimately their ideas, when they do tie into the strategy, do get some funding and do get some resources from a PI perspective, and that's actually fun to watch, because we actually start to create some momentum with that as well.
Sure. Now, having won the Baldrige Award, and I have some familiarity with Baldrige, I believe it's still category 4 that's on the measurement side of it. So can you talk a little bit about cascading those measurements, your KPIs, down through your organization, and how you tie at not just the executive level, but then down through the department levels, maybe even down through the individual levels?
Yeah, it's the absolute key function for this whole thing, is to make sure that your metric is that they're in alignment. So at the executive level, they're really tied to some actually throughout our whole system, they're tied to some compensation things, that happens annually. But ultimately, what happens is as we decide on the metrics, and they do change. Once we get to a point with a metric where we're stable and in the top 10 or 5%, we'll pull that out and work on something else. But what we do is, the employees and staff can go on our intranets and figure out where we are. But down at the department level is truly where it works. So in our hospitals, every day there's a huddle, and it's not just a safety huddle. They actually have all the metrics listed on a whiteboard, and everybody has to go up there and kind of fill in where they are that day. So they're able to get data through our electronic health record. So they'll fill out where they are that day, and if they had a fall or if they had something that falls out, they need to explain it. And then that process, those same set of metrics, and there's only about 8 or 9 of them that we really focus on at that level, are then pushed down to the idea boards and the whiteboards at the department level. And those managers are really expected, one of our competencies, those managers are expected to speak about those every day to the staff and every month in the staff meeting. And then ultimately we can have a feedback loop with that as well, driving it all the way back up to our strategy development that happens annually.
Excellent, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Angie.
Sure. The firms that I've seen do really well with keeping alignment with their strategy have really solid integrated planning processes in place. So typically this is a sales and operations or S&OP planning process that occurs monthly, right? And it's important for leaders to continuously remind and communicate across the organization of what the strategy is. And if you have, outlined the strategy in terms of 5 pillars or 7 strategic imperatives, however that communication happens, it needs to happen on an ongoing basis. So those firms that bring together business resources with the transformation resources and a sales and operations planning type of monthly process, you're continuously reminded of the strategy and you're always linking demand with supply and capacity and kind of looking at where the transformational needs are to support that.
Great, thank you. And can you tell me then a little bit more about your organization in particular? Do you also have that linkage and alignment between your business strategy as well as your business transformation initiatives?
Yes, we've recently started an integrated planning process. So we bring our product and our geography leaders together with the transformation team and kind of look at the holistic view of all efforts and initiatives that are happening throughout the company. These might be compliance-based projects or they might be large-scale technology transformational projects. And we make sure that there's enough capacity and resources to really kind of nail the top 3 throughout that year. So I think, one key to making a transformation successful is focusing on the critical few. And, there's time to continuously focus on the critical few each year and take one step at a time. And throughout in the next 3 to 5 years, you should, be well on track to meet your strategy.
Very good. Thank you. All right. The next topic of discussion for us is implementing changes in leadership thinking and behaviors to embrace and support organizational transformation. I'm sure that we all agree that most of our efforts fail because we don't have the right leadership support and the right leadership alignment, sometimes leadership behavior. So I think this will be a great topic. Angie, can you start us off with this?
Sure, and it was just recently that our firm started taking change management as a very critical component to any transformation. So we've really instilled some discipline around how we treat change management. And it's not just within our own leadership, but it's with the entire stakeholder group that's being impacted by the change. So really understanding what the change is, who it's impacting, and why they care about the change, and really linking your communication strategy to that is critical in just making progress, whether it's through leadership or through all of the colleagues that are impacted through that change.
Now you mentioned communication, and I'm a firm believer that in a change management effort like going through an enterprise transformation, heading down this road for process excellence, that communication is key. Can you tell us a little bit more about a communication plan that you've used successfully?
Absolutely, and communication can take many forms. It should not be just one-way communication, right? You want two-way communication. You want the ability to receive input from those involved in the project or the transformation. So it's anything from having big working sessions with colleagues that are in the process to engaging with clients or other suppliers, or in our case, insurance carriers, to understanding the holistic objective and really engaging the group in understanding what the fundamental changes are and making sure that everyone's on board. The communication isn't just a town hall, one-way dialogue. It's a two-way way of getting input, and it's constant. It needs to occur every day, every month, and it really, you should take a look at that with your change management strategy and understand who your key stakeholders are and keep them engaged throughout the whole time.
Yeah, that's great, and I love it when organizations have a theme around that effort, because I think putting the theme around it creates some buzz, and then allowing that to permeate through the organization so that it's everywhere, whether it's on the bulletin board, it's on people's screensavers, whatever it is, just as a reminder for the importance of it. And then again, the leaders walk their talk. They're out there ensuring that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, encouraging, coaching, modeling, and mentoring. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, I think as Angie mentioned, change management, it's likely the toughest part of my job. And I've been rereading a book lately Patrick Lencioni wrote about silos, and what he talks about is making sure that senior leaders, when they're gathered together to talk about large change initiatives, they take off that departmental hat and really put on the enterprise hat and try to think about things from the enterprise perspective as if they were the CEO or COO making those tough decisions. So I agree, Angie hit it spot on. I think it's clearly articulating the vision, making sure that all of the leaders are together and connecting the dots, and then how you roll that out across the organization is critically important. I think a lot of organizations miss the point here. We recently, within our org, went through a really challenging change around organizational effectiveness, where we were seeking to flatten the organization, really streamline decision-making, and with that came some tough decisions. And I think our senior leaders did a really good job of communicating that through a variety of means. There was video communication, emails, restroom, break room readers. There were town hall sessions, opportunities for associates to submit questions and get responses. So highly transparent, over-communicated a lot of the key issues, and then had continuous touch points to make sure that managers, as the most influential person in relation to our associates, had the right tools to be able to clearly communicate why that change was important. And no change goes off 100% of the time really, really well, but this one, for what it was, I think was handled extremely well, and it's really a case study in how to do something like that.
That's great. Thank you. Sure. Sean.
This is probably my favorite topic when I talk about performance excellence, because I think that a performance excellence system can help leadership in two ways. It can either help a mature leadership system, one that has high trust, high expectations, high commitment. It can really help it move the organization forward. But if you've got a new leadership system or new leaders or a new organization, it can also be used as a framework really for kind of a leadership development process that takes time while still ensuring results. And I think that Steve and Angie done a phenomenal job of talking about aligning the vision and the communication piece. The one thing that we're finding that's helpful for us in the hospital healthcare setting is reconnecting our leaders, and it can be from the CEO all the way through back with the patient. And everybody usually in healthcare has kind of grown up within healthcare in some way and has some patient connection, but oftentimes it's been years since some of our leaders have had truly direct interaction. So we have a lot of different processes and expectations and systems in which we reconnect our leaders with our patients and actually let them hear from our patients what they're needing. And it truly kind of sparks this intrinsic drive for our leaders that some of them forgot they had, and they may not have all the the nuts and bolts of how we're going to change yet, but boy, we get a kind of a true north when that happens, and then we promote that by making sure patients are on our leadership teams and our committees and all of that, just to make sure that we continuously remind ourselves of why we're here. And then the change is still hard. It's still work. It's a lot of work, and it can be frustrating, but at least you've got the kind of the deeper sense of purpose on why we're doing it. So I think it doesn't matter if you're healthcare or what. My wife's a teacher, and they do the same thing, connecting with their students. I think that's an important piece.
So would that be like a voice of the customer, basically? Because for you, the patients are your customers.
It really is, and it's more than just the surveys that we have to send out, and I don't mean that in a pejorative way. We do send out surveys, and we get the HCAHPS ranking, and that's fine, but that doesn't have a face to it. Those surveys don't, and you can get that data, but until that data becomes a person, boy, it just doesn't spark the same level of commitment and change. And I get really excited about this, that we get when it's truly a patient or a family member sitting in there in the board meeting or the senior executive meeting with us and telling us about their experience, either good or bad. But boy, that's where the change will happen for us.
So you touched a little bit on the leadership thinking part of it, in that you mentioned that listening to the patients, having the contact with the patients again, kind of lightens up that intrinsic motivation that they had originally for getting into medicine. Can you talk specifically around leadership behaviors? Do you see any changes there in their, I say, emotional intelligence, for example?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is probably a change in emotional intelligence. And I think the other thing that we actually do as a result of that is we actually engage our leaders in any of the performance improvement initiatives where they actually have to be a part of the true initiative on the ground work. And of course, there's a patient involved with that as well. But the behavior change then is we'll start seeing those leaders in the departments more. They have a vested interest in how the change is doing because they actually helped design it, and they were in the 1 or 2 day event that came up with the solution. So they have a little bit of an ego-driven or an invested personal investment into seeing the change happen, and they become much more visual and much more kind of in the work at that point. So we definitely see behavior change, and then we tie all of our training and hiring to that as well. So there's a bunch of things that happen with the behavior change.
Great. Angie, what about for you? Do you see any specific leadership changes?
Yeah, I would say and just like Steve and Sean mentioned, anytime that you have the opportunity to really make it visual and put a face there, you'll see the leadership behaviors really lighten up, and they really start to understand what's important to the client or the customer or to other value chain partners. So we built, for example, a trading floor where we interact on a daily basis with other insurance carriers, and just understanding their needs and having that face and that representation there in person makes such a huge difference when it comes to just driving home what's truly important across the firm.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Nice.
Sean, or Steve, I'm sorry. Steve, how about you? We haven't heard from you on this one, leadership behaviors.
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind, and I'm going to step into Sean's shoes for a minute. I actually started my career in behavioral health on the facility side, and so one of the programs that I thought was always really unique was our CEO had anyone that came in into a leadership role, I think director or above, spend 24 hours as a inpatient at the facility. So it not only acclimated them to what we were there to do and learned very intensely about what it means to be in that type of setting, but they came out with fresh eyes and fresh ideas that they would then present to the senior leadership team. And so there's a constant feedback loop on ways that we could improve. And then more recently, I've seen organizations like Humana who take senior leaders out when they go to visit Medicare patients in their homes, so they get a real sense of what it's like in a day in the life of one of those members, and they come away with a unique perspective as well. Internal to our organization, we use personas and video presentations of real members that we track their experience and what their life looks like, and are constantly reinforcing that with our leaders as well as our associates. So yeah, it's critically important.
That's cool. That's great.
Great. This is such a great topic, and I know one that's probably near and dear to our hearts, since we're all leaders in our individual organizations and even in our various industries. Do either any one of you have questions for each other?
Well, I'm always a sponge for how people are doing things, and if anything we can be doing better. So I guess if anybody has any tips that they've found that works, regardless of how small or how big, I'm always happy to hear it. I love it.
Yeah,
I agree.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Steve.
Steve, you go ahead.
I was just going to say I like the diversity and the opportunity to speak with leaders from other areas of the organization. I'm part of an association of internal management consultants, and I really appreciate that time during the year to be, as Sean said, a sponge for folks who are really, I think, doing things differently and probably uniquely and maybe even better. So, Angie, I'd like to hear maybe a little bit about, and Sean, you as well, from a performance improvement or process excellence perspective, what do the organizations look like within your respective areas, and do you have standalone specific orgs that are responsible for oversight of that within your orgs?
For transformation, we have a transformation team, and then we also have a program management office that oversees all large initiatives that require funding, whether it's for technology or whether it's for sales improvement or process improvement strategies. And that's kind of how we link the firm throughout the year and really just kind of keep a governance cycle across the initiative. I always think it's interesting to hear what other industries are doing. There are so many best practices within healthcare or within financial services or within manufacturing that seem to have stayed within their respective industry, and a group that can share across industries and learn from each other and best practices, I just think is wonderful.
Great. It's interesting to me. Our three speakers today, for the most part, are transactional in nature, and I'll speak just quickly on the manufacturing side in terms of leadership behaviors and how we drive changes in leadership behaviors. And it's similar, I think, to Sean, what you were saying, is getting that senior executive team closer to where the work is done, so to speak, and encouraging them to get out on the manufacturing floor, really get into conversation with those people that are actually doing the work, mentoring them, coaching them, asking them, how can we improve this? What is it about this role, this job that you're doing that we can improve? And hearing right directly from them, and then documenting that and clearly doing something with it, because it's great to go down there and talk to them, but unless you really take that feedback away and do something with it, and then making that visual. All right, I'd like to kind of loop back now to one of our earlier conversations where we were talking about our KPIs and our measurement systems and the effect that those have and how you tie that to your financial imperatives. I know when I first started in process excellence years ago, my mentor told me I needed to always be sure to speak the language of management, which was money. What does this mean for me? How do I tie everything back to the improvements that we're making to money? So how do you and your organizations take those, your business transformation initiatives, your KPI, and measure those up against your financial imperatives that you have for your organization? Sean, can you start us on that conversation?
Yeah, this is always one that in kind of management leadership, so to your point, this is kind of how we talk now, but trying to convince our folks on the floor that this is important is a little different, because they don't necessarily think in the terms of finance, but everything is financially driven for us without a doubt, and then we have some pretty interesting metrics and pretty significant metrics that we can look at that have a financial impact. But the other thing that we've done, and this is a little bit divergent from your question, is that we've also tied some quality pieces to the finance. So, for example, if we can get a patient that has a heart surgery up and moving and actually get them out of the hospital, they're going to do better. And so getting them out of the hospital is actually good for us. We don't want them to be taking over a bed that we could be using it for other patients. It's actually good for us to get them out. But from a nurse perspective, that's not the only reason. There are better outcomes if we can tie somebody up and moving and walking on their own. They just do better. And when we can make the alignment between either the quality, the patient satisfaction, and the financial, that's truly what matters. And we have the same financial stuff that every health system has, for sure. But translating that to something else and something that makes sense has been our key, I think, a key for us.
Very good. Steve, for you?
Yeah, we use a combination of quantitative as well as qualitative metrics. Primarily, we really focus on the ones you typically hear. We're looking at ROI. We're also really focused on eliminating rework as a primary driver of waste and cost within the various processes that we're working in. More recently, and I mentioned earlier, as we moved from a B2B to a business-to-consumer organization, we've really started paying a lot more attention to metrics like Net Promoter Score. So, how often are you likely to recommend our services to a friend or family member? And healthcare in general and health insurance, I mean, I think we're worse than the cable company. Hope nobody on the call is from the cable company, but we're down there at the bottom, and with a lot of room to grow, which is a good thing, I guess, if you look at it from that perspective. So starting to look at more qualitative measures around consumer centricity, which really ultimately for an organization may end up costing you something. Might not have the ROI that you're used to seeing in a transactional type environment, but is critical for the survival of organizations like ours in a more consumer-centric environment. So a little bit of a mix of the things that you would typically see for most organizations, but it's evolving to really be more focused on the consumer.
Yeah, that Net Promoter Score is interesting. Is that something that you recently just started utilizing as a metric?
I think our marketing insights area has probably looked at that for in the past, but it has not ever been kind of the large big dot key metric that it has become over the last 2 years since the passage of the ACA. We really as the exchanges have proliferated and we've grown to be more focused on consumers, it's a critical metric for us now, and probably has been that way for, I would say, the last 18 to 24 months.
Now, Sean, how would that be in healthcare, the Net Promoter Score, now that we're, as you said, the consumers are shopping around, looking for, the best in healthcare, whether it's quality service, whatever. Is that something that you guys have considered?
Oh yeah, so there's actually, so we have these things called HCAPs, which is just a patient survey that gets reported up through the government, and it's public data. And one of the questions truly is, I would recommend this hospital, and that's in essence the net promoter piece there. It's incredibly important though, because our patients they expect quality, so they expect we're going to take care of them well, and we're not going to mess up a surgery or anything else. That's a minimum expectation, as it should be. And we're really now finding that where our competitive advantage and where we are able to distinguish ourselves is truly in the service aspect. And it was interesting listening to Steve, because one of that pieces is the partnership between the provider, the patient, and the payer. And we're seeing so much more synergy there, and it's such a like what Steve was talking about, it's such a better product and process for the patient ultimately, when the people providing the care and paying for the care are aligned and truly kind of a partner in the care. It's just an awesome thing, and it's good for patients, and it helps our Net Promoter Score as a hospital, and it would help the insurance company, Anthems, or whoever as well.
Great, that's great. Angie, how about for your organization and the financial imperatives that you have?
Yeah, we usually start at the very highest level with profit margin and then break apart the equation, right? So there's a revenue component and there's a cost component. So within revenue, you may have different strategies. Maybe it's acquiring new clients and new business, or it's expanding products and services that you offer to existing clients. And then, there's different strategies within obtaining higher prices or additional volumes there. And then on the cost side, just as Steve and Sean mentioned, we have a lot of quality efforts, because quality is a key component of cost, and then there's also productivity efforts. And I think what's really key is bringing that into a dashboard that you can see on a daily, monthly, quarterly view, and making sure that you've clearly identified who's accountable for some of those metrics. And driving home that accountability is where you're really going to start to see some progress and align those transformation efforts. But just to emphasize, Net Promoter Score and client experience is definitely another focus area for us as we move forward into the next couple of years.
Now you mentioned accountability. You know, again, such a big piece, and especially we talked earlier about leadership behaviors, making people accountable for those metrics. Do you have some secrets that you can share with us?
Yes, it's critical, first of all, just to get everyone on the same set of data and the same view, right? So let's just take an example of our offices. We have many offices across the United States, many office heads, and at one point they were all looking at different sources of data. But now if they all look at the same source of data and their accountabilities are kind of tied into their annual performance reviews and their incentives are all aligned to those accountabilities, and that's really kind of what holds it all together.
Steve or Sean, anything on your trade secrets for accountability?
This is Sean. The one thing, I guess we do a couple of things. We do make it accountable on a daily basis, even at the financial level. So I talked about those daily huddles. There are financial pieces on there. It could be something like overtime or average length of stay. So people actually see it, and it's real to them. You know, a financial report at the end of the month or the end of the quarter isn't as real as something they remembered yesterday, and so that helps us actually with some ideas. And then we do kind of like Angie talked about. We do tie people's compensation to these metrics, and we're all on the same page. And there's some compensation that's actually at risk based on how well we do financial quality, patient satisfaction, and a few other areas as well. So it's real. We update those scorecards all the time, and people can kind of figure out what their bonus is going to be, if we're going to have one or not. So we try to make it as real as possible, and we always talk about kind of why we do it in as much as what we're doing.
And I heard you say about timing as well, that if you can make it more regular timing, whether it's daily, weekly, it's certainly much more powerful than a monthly or quarterly conversation.
Correct. They can connect with it better. People can in general.
Yes. Steve, anything you'd like to add?
I think they hit on pretty similar topics that I would cover. I think there is a mix there. We do have a quarterly review like most organizations, and it's responsibility of the managers to review some pretty critical financial information with our associates, and then to tie that back to how their role within the organization impacts those metrics overall. We have a good combination within our compensation program and our review process that ties to large overarching enterprise metrics, cost and revenue. Then we also have divisional as well as individual and departmental metrics. And obviously the individual and departmental metrics are more easily attainable on a consistent basis, and I can share that information with my associates during one-on-one sessions bi-weekly. Some of the higher level financials, we have to wait till the quarterly releases to share that info, but there's a stream there between all of that information that helps the associates point to what am I doing on a day-to-day basis that's impacting each of these key metrics, and how do I improve and thus improve the overall metrics as well.
Yep.
Great. I know that each of you are speaking at the upcoming DPEX Summit, and I'd like to wrap up our session today with giving our viewing audience an opportunity to hear from each of you on your topics and some of the things that you're going to cover, so they can get excited about attending your session. So Angie, can you share with us what you're speaking on at the summit?
Sure. My topic is around making BPM success happen, so business process management. And what I will share with you is a large transformational journey that we have within my firm, and how we engage colleagues, how we engage our technology group, and how we are still on the road to making the transformation happen. But I'll share some of our success stories as well as some of the areas where we had some significant challenges, and it'll be a nice interactive discussion, so we'll look forward to having some fun there.
And that's where the learning happens, isn't it? Is through the challenges, not so much the successes.
Absolutely.
Great. I'll look forward to that. Sean.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak about the people side of change, everywhere from, how the question about how do we develop and encourage leadership behavior that promotes performance excellence, all the way through to the people doing the work, and that's probably where my passion lies. And I've got a number of examples in healthcare and outside of healthcare that show, what works well, what doesn't work well. And like Angie, I'll walk through kind of a case study where we stumbled a little bit, but ultimately because of the focus that we had, that focus allowed us to kind of get through things. And I think it's applicable to whether you're in healthcare, outside of healthcare.
Absolutely. We can always draw parallels from these challenges, successes, and then experiences just by sharing them. So that's great. Steve, how about you? Let's hear about your session.
Yeah, I'll be speaking on establishing centers of excellence, getting better at getting better. So I'll be looking at and talking through our history at Anthem with establishing centers of excellence, why we feel like it can be the optimal way to help sustain operational improvements and deliver business results. Talk a little bit about our journey, what needs to happen first, where we are now versus where we started, some of the lessons learned along the way. So I'm looking forward to presenting, but also looking forward to hearing the other presentations and hopefully learning a lot.
I agree.
That's great. I believe that the learning happens when we're all in this together and we're able to share these stories. So that's all the time that we've got for now, and I thank you, Angie, Steve, and Sean, for your participation. This is some really exciting stuff and such a great teaser of what's to come and what we can expect at the Performance Excellence Summit this year in San Francisco. This year's summit has tracks on leadership and culture, BPM, operational excellence in manufacturing, and the customer experience. It allows all delegate executives to customize their time on site and ensure that every session is relative to your specific interests and challenges. So for our viewers, please book your places now at www.businessperformanceexcellencesummit.com to find out even more about the speakers and the program for this exciting event. It's going to be an informative, insightful few days for certain. Thank you again from PEX Network. I've been Cheryl Archer.